Our first keynote of this year's Out Summit is Geena Rocero. Born and raised in the Philippines, she is an award-winning producer, model, public speaker, trans rights advocate, and television host. And I want to let everyone know that this session will be translated into Spanish, and you'll see in the chat what you have to do to access this in Spanish. Geena has been a friend of Outright for a long time, and we have seen her really take off as an activist and use her platform to shed light on the challenges that the trans community face. In 2014, Geena came out as transgender at the annual TED conference, and her viral talk has been viewed close to 5 million times and translated into 32 languages. She has been on the cover of more magazines than I can mention here. She has spoken at the White House, the World Economic Forum, United Nations, and multiple Fortune 500 companies. She's the founder of Gender Proud, a media production company that tells stories about what it means to be trans and gender non-conforming. Welcome, Geena. Can't wait to hear from you.
Awesome. Hi. Hello, everyone. Again, thank you, Maria, for that lovely introduction. I have to say, it is an honor to join all of you all, wherever you are. It is an honor to share this space with you. And just like what Maria had said, I have to say that my journey as an activist, as someone who wanted to use the privileges and the platform that I've been given, really, I could look back. It's like a full circle moment here for me. I was the Commission of Status of Women in 2013, and being in that space with everyone, sharing their stories, but most importantly, as someone who was born and raised in the Philippines, and to be in that space, meaning Angie Umbak, an activist from the Philippines, and to be in that space where knowing that these are the group of community and family that I will be joining, it was an incredible honor. Since 2014, in this moment of reflection, I can't help but think of that particular moment. As someone, as I've mentioned, born and raised in the Philippines, moving to the United States with a dream of wanting to be a model, in a place where, being born and raised in the Philippines, in a country that have always had visibility for trans women, specifically in our transgender pageant, but we didn't have any political recognition, and we're still fighting for our full political recognition. And to move to the United States and all of a sudden to live this life, almost like it was a dichotomy of moving to California, where there was a degree of political recognition, where I could change my name and gender marker on my legal documents, but then there was no cultural visibility. It was a paradox in my experience. So moving to New York City and wanting to pursue my modeling career, it presented a different challenge. For close to 8 years, I was in the closet. My model agent did not know, the industry did not know about my trans story, and I certainly recognize a degree of privilege in that. But at some point, after living that life for close to 8 years, it did a tremendous, in a way, emotional turmoil that I've experienced of, I'm in this industry that was all about the power of imagery, but I was not being seen as my authentic, proud trans woman. 2014 changed that whole moment of that. And when I did that TED Talk, when I decided that if I'm going to take the control of my narrative and to speak at TED, I wanted it to be big. I wanted it to mean something. So in conversations with Outright and so many different activists all over the world, I wanted to launch Gender Proud as an advocacy, advocating for starting with gender recognition policies, trans rights in general. It was a privilege to travel the world and meet so many of my trans and gender non-conforming siblings, the indigenous folks, the indigenous communities that have been doing the work. at some point, I realized, what does it mean now, as I mentioned, as someone who have lived half of my life in the Philippines and half of my life in the United States, to all of a sudden travel the world and speak about issues, about my personal story, about the trans community. There's always this notion for myself as well, like, what does it mean to be seen as someone with this, in a way, Western ideals, but still with that lived experience of someone from the global South? I posed that question for myself because I think that's in a way that some of those bigger questions that I ask for myself. I want to present that very nuanced point of view. But then I think most importantly, as I travel the world and work with different folks, is that I realize the most important thing is to go back to my lived experience, but most importantly, to decolonize my mindset. As a Philippines, a country that's been colonized multiple times over, I realized that I am standing on shoulders of giants to the trans women that have been, leading the way in the community, whether it's TRAP, whether it's Ganda Pilipinas, whether it's TLF Share, the activist groups that's been doing the work way before. But most importantly, the historical context of the pre-colonized culture in the Philippines, the babaylan, the spiritual leaders that are revered, not just then, but also now. I want to inhabit that spirit of what does it mean now for me as an out and proud transgender, decolonized immigrant Filipina living in United States. Certainly 2020, it's been, can't underestimate the tragic realities that we're dealing with right now. I can't help but look back at the beginning of 2020 when I was asked to be the national chair for this year's Stonewall Day. We presented this dilemma of how do we use our platforms to help the most marginalized in our community. And as a national chair, I wanted to emphasize that we wanted to start first by helping trans, Black and brown trans-led organizations, and we're happy to have had, raised, close to 100,000 for these organizations. Around June, there was a particular moment when the uprisings was happening, and then a few weeks before the June Pride here in the United States, there were the onslaught of murders and violence that the trans community was experiencing. And then the Supreme Court decisions about the employment non-discrimination protections that includes trans and gender identity protections. But then the day after, another murder of a Black trans woman. It's that kind of trauma that I personally myself, felt that I've never experienced in that intensity as we all are experiencing in this moment. But I want to say that in that moment, only revitalized that need, why we need to be there for each other, why in this moment, and what we now know that as marginalized community, that we've always known, the systems in place it's very vulnerable. The systems in place that we're always fighting for a more inclusive and just world where equity and the voices of the most marginalized are centered. These are the things that we've known for so long. I've been telling people, and this is why now more than ever, dismantling white supremacist, gender binary systems that's been in place must be dismantled completely, right away, as soon as possible. But in reality, this is a long game, right? As I've mentioned, this is a moment where I realized that people has been doing this work for so long, more than me, and obviously the new generations of our trans and LGBT youth that are doing the work needs to be supported. I also can't help but in this moment where we're Zooming, when we're having conversations with our community, now more than ever, we have to be there for each other. I'm in conversation with my trans sisters that are sex workers in the Philippines that have lost their work because they're not able to travel. But most of my trans sisters that are most importantly, that they're providers for their family. It's that kind of resilience that I'm listening to what they're doing. I'm listening to, how they're surviving, from moving the work, from traveling all over Southeast Asia to moving it online. I have to say, if there's one thing that I carried with me as we move forward, as we thank God the election that we got here in the United States, is to go back to where I started. This year for my birthday, it was a touching moment where I was able to celebrate my birthday fittingly in the Philippines with our Zoom trans pageant lottery. And it was amazing to be there with my trans family and my siblings that I've known since I was 15 years old. And to just share that moment, to share that space, because that relationship that I've had with them since I was 15 years old, my trans mother who showed me the way, who saw something in me when I started joining trans pageants, is the energy that I want to bring in right now. And, as I continue this work, because at the end of the day, we only have each other. And that conversations that we're having when I wake up in the morning, where I share cooking pancake with my trans mother over a Facebook video, is what keeps me going. And if there's one message I just want to leave with everybody, is that. And that community, I'm so lucky to have had my trans siblings and family in the Philippines that I'm still in touch with today. But sometimes it just takes that one person. I had that one person, when I was 15 years old, that saw something in me, that saw a better future for me, that have nurtured and guided me. And in turn, I'm sharing this message to everyone, because that's what we need to hold on to. The people that loved us, the people that wants the best for us, that wants us to see us shine. And in this moment in time, that's what we all need. And I look forward to continuing this work with all of y'all. I owe so much of the privileges and the space that I'm able to inhabit because of the work of the activists that's been there, way before I started. And I'm more inspired more than ever. So thank you so much again for giving me this space. Thank you for Maria. Thank you to everybody at Outright. Thank you.